Coaches Take on Work is a community of coaches sharing our perspectives on work today. Come for the spicy takes and stay for the quick tools and tips. Find everything from best practices in management and leadership to our thoughts on trending topics in work and some fun things you may not be expecting.
Yeah, should be fun.
Spoiler alert for our listeners too.
I know.
I think that's exciting. Well, with today though, maybe to kick us off, we are going to be talking about expectations. So, welcome everyone who's joining us. Today I have Chelsea Side and Anna Latti who will be walking through and really breaking down expectations and why these are so important, how setting clear expectations really help us not only align with our team members, but also provide clarity, which is really powerful for producing high-performing teams and getting work done. And just kind of as you listen, this isn't only for managers. I think there's something that anyone could take away because this is really working with others, which if you've been in the workforce long enough is basically part of every project. And so we also really will think about this from a lens of when you're working with others and peers, how we set clear expectations as well. So I also just want to highlight that this is, and we'll dig into this more too, but really a cornerstone of the management skills we like to think about, because when you're able to start setting clear expectations, and a lot of other things fall in line, and the ladies will talk more about that in detail too. So without any further ado, I will let them introduce themselves. Chelsea, if you want to kick us off, share a little bit about yourself, and then Anna, please.
Of course. Thanks, Jaclyn. As Jaclyn shared, I'm Chelsea Side. I am the founder and chief coach consultant at Talent Praxis, where we help people turn ideas into actions by doing one-on-one coaching, mostly with managers and leaders, training in management and leadership skills, and consulting in behavioral competencies. And I'm really excited about expectations today, mostly because of Jaclyn's intro, just that expectations are the foundation for everything you're going to do, probably every difficult conversation you're going to have, every misalignment you're going to run into goes back to how well upfront did you align, communicate, define, and discuss expectations? So if you can listen in today and really change and adopt different practices based on what we're discussing today, hopefully it would yield much better results for any other topic that may come up.
Yeah, and I'm Anna, and I am the founding coach of Talent Squared. I help leaders and team members lean into their potential and their strengths to exponentiate talent. And just as Chelsea said, and Jaclyn also started us off with, was saying that, was talking about how important expectations are, and how they really are one of the cornerstones of everything that happens at work, really. And whether you're a manager or a leader or a team member, with the people I coach, expectations are something that generally come up with everyone at some point in time, whether it's around misalignment with your team members as a manager and feeling like you're not able to quite communicate to your team members what's going on and what you need from them, or whether it's team members feeling overwhelmed or stressed. Quite often that has to do with expectations and not having aligned on expectations properly. So really great topic to talk about, and really excited to be able to share some ways of thinking and talking about expectations in the workplace.
Yeah, and thanks, Anna, because I think that is why we all get excited about this. This kind of becomes the root problem often. And so they'll start talking about a difficult conversation or someone's not performing, but really when we get into it, it's about missed expectation setting opportunity. And so I would love to start there, because there is a lot that I think is assumed when people are communicating expectations. Often people are actually just delivering information, but not setting clear expectations. So I want to kind of demystify the idea of what an expectation is, and also break down where assumption lies in that. So to kick us off, Chelsea, if you don't mind, just to simplify this, when we say expectations, like what are we really talking about?
Yeah. So an expectation is just what you want or hope will happen. It's often defined as a belief, a perception. I like to use the word assumption as well. And what's really particular about an expectation is remembering that anyone else you're interacting with has their own set of expectations that is built and biased really based on their context of understanding, their background, their experiences, how they're taking in stimulus around them. So whatever you are expecting or believing is going to happen, everyone else around you has their own set of beliefs. And so when we're talking about expectation, it's really the game of aligning your beliefs with others.
We've kind of all touched on how important this is. But Anna, would you add anything to that? I mean, hearing kind of as Chelsea breaks it down, why is this then so important?
Well, like Chelsea said, it's because everyone has their own set of expectations. And if we aren't saying things aloud and actually communicating about what we think is going to happen or what we want to have happen, then very likely are going to have misalignment there. And it's so common. It happens so often. An example that comes up so often with people I've coached throughout my time as a coach and even during my time in HR is when managers talk about tasks to be done or assignments with team members. Quite often we don't talk about exactly how you want things to be done. You set a deadline, but what is expected to be delivered on that deadline? Quite often we haven't defined the specifics of that. And that's fine if the manager and employee know each other quite well already and basically know what each other deliver and expect. But especially if the relationship is a little bit newer or the task or assignment is something different from what you're used to, very often there can be misalignment around what is expected to be delivered on the actual deadline date. So I often talk about degrees of perfection, for example, with team members and managers as well. Like, have you communicated openly about what is expected on that deadline date? Is it a first draft or is it the perfect final version? Because that's a huge causer of stress for many team members. They think they're expected to deliver something perfect on the deadline date, and the manager is only expecting like a first draft of something to be collaborated on later, and vice versa as well. Manager might be expecting exactly that, a first draft, and then you end up getting this almost perfect version of something, but without having had the opportunity to actually align throughout the process of making that final version and perhaps needing to make changes in the meantime. So that was a long-winded way of saying that because we all assume different things about the outcome and deliverables, it's very, very helpful to sometimes stop and just verbalize what you're actually thinking.
Well, I really appreciate that example because I think it really does crystallize for people. And that's a common one, right? As simple as perfection, which I think hangs up a lot of people. Chelsea, would you add any other areas that you really do see managers kind of getting hung up on expectations and how they're delivering that information or not? Like Anna says, sometimes it's not being actually verbally communicated.
Yeah. I think they're really hung up in their assumptions. And I assume this was communicated clearly, or I assume we're aligned on this. I assumed they know what I'm talking about. I assumed the deadline was obvious. I assumed what success looked like for this project was obvious. And I don't think it's coming from a place of poor intentions, right? If we remember from childhood, the game of telephone where two versions this was played. Like one, you're sitting in a circle and you whisper to the person next to you something and everyone whispers it until it gets back to the end. And it's often jumbled and changed and it's an entirely different statement. And it was always a joke and everyone would laugh. Or you think about having the like canned phone on the string and the other canned phone, and you really can't understand the other person. This is the communication game, right? We're communicating something. A person is taking in everything that's going on around them, including background noise, your body language, their perception of you and the situation, and they're translating what you're saying before they actually understand it. And that's normally what's going wrong, is I'm assuming that I communicated something clearly. I mean, even think about, like, did I tell them what the deadline was? Right? Like, I thought we had a deadline, but now we are far past it. So I don't know what went wrong. So really, I think, consider this from a place of good intentions on both sides. Communication is just impossibly tricky. And so when you're misaligned with expectations with someone else, doing your best to just say, like, this happens, right? Our job as communicators primarily is to try to realign, try to fix things as we're getting feedback that things went poorly. So yeah, I think it's mostly just an assumptions problem. I assume we're aligned, and probably not.
If the results don't show it. And things move so fast. I mean, I think that's kind of maybe the extra pressure on a lot of what we're talking about here, is things are moving so fast. So, did I mention that? Was that a Slack? Was that an email? Is that a passing by conversation? I mean, things are not helping us in some ways as well. And so it does add that extra layer, which is what makes it so important as well. So if we could start breaking this down, though, because there are various categories. When we talk about expectations, we've kind of talked about it from a lens of tasks and things like that. But what are the different categories where we would be setting expectations let's go with you. Like, what are those categories?
Yeah, for sure. So if we're looking at the Berkeley framework, which we are talking about here today and which we frequently use as a resource, then the different categories of expectations we like to look at are projects, so one-off things, one-off tasks, roles, so your job role, essentially. What are you doing in your job? What's related to your job description? It's your ongoing responsibilities and measurements around those. And then culture. So that's more about customs and norms and behaviors. So those are three categories that make it easier to break down talking about expectations, because if you're just thinking, oh, expectations, like defining expectations, then it might be a little bit difficult to know where to start. But if you think about it as, well, am I communicating expectations around the projects and assignments I'm involved in, I am assigning to people? Am I communicating expectations regarding the team members' roles, job descriptions, the measurable outcomes that we're actually tracking and looking at? Have I communicated about my expectations around our team's collective behaviors and norms, what the culture is essentially like? So that's a good breakdown of how to start thinking about what are the different things in which we need to communicate about expectations more clearly.
And I mean, Anna's kind of highlighting it now. We mentioned the formula at the start. So Chelsea, let's actually talk about the Berkeley formula. So what are we saying when there is a quote unquote formula for setting expectations?
Yeah. So if you're looking to clarify and align on expectations, you're looking to define more specifically three things. So the first is the action. So that is the, what do I expect you to do? What's the action at hand here? The second is the behavior. So this is the, how are you going to do this thing? What is the process? What are the methods? How are you actually going to carry forward this action? And then the last is the results. And so if you complete the action the way I expect you to, how I expect you to, these should be the results. So this will include timelines, deadlines. This will include what you expect to see differently, maybe how you expect things to feel differently, both those quantitative and qualitative measures. And these are, these could be your key performance indicators, your KPIs, if I will. So when you're clarifying expectations, you really want to clarify on those three. And you can use this as a bit of a diagnostic. So you could audit, hey, how am I already communicating expectations today? Maybe record yourself or consider an email, reread a chat message, how well do I define what I'm looking for people to do? How well do I define how they're going to do it and the results? So as an example, let's say you're going to have a team member communicate a new report. So, hey, here's what I need you to do. I need you to communicate about this new reporting we're doing. How? I want you to send an email updating the team. And what should be the results? Well, first, the email is sent, right? That's like success metric 1. Second, maybe you want to say like what goes into the email so that it would be successful, or give a little bit more detail. And then third, what should happen after the email is sent? So there should be greater clarity on why we're using this report and what the desired results should be from it. Just a quick example. But yeah, action, behavior, results.
Yeah, and just to add to that, this way of thinking of the framework as a diagnostic, it works both ways. So we've talked a lot now about essentially like communicating expectations outward, and managers communicating expectations more to their team members. But team members and just like team members of a team members of a project can also ask about expectations using this same framework and this same diagnostic, if you will. It works both ways, and that's why it's really great, because you can also, as a team member or project team member, think about, well, do I really know the expectations? Do I feel confident in my knowledge around the expectations for this project, the outcomes of it? Do I feel confident in my understanding of what the expectations of our collective team behaviors are, my job description? And then when we go into the details of thinking about the actions and results and behaviors, the actions, results, and behaviors. I said it right just then. Mm-hmm. Do I have a good sense of that? And ask. When you don't know, ask. It's always so helpful to over communicate rather than under communicate, and I think that's always something that's really understated. I get excited about talking about this.
Well, like Chelsea said, we're communicated. That's part of our roles. And I appreciate you saying that, because it's an open dialogue, hopefully, if you have that safety in your team, but to manage up in that way, to clarify, the onus is just not on one party, and it's across as well. And usually if it's clearly set expectations and iterated on, everyone performs better. Everything goes smoother. I mean, there is some really powerful results from these things. So I mean, I guess I'm curious, do you feel like there's any other examples that come to mind as you are thinking about this that would help people imagine what it looks like to clearly set expectations or realign expectations? Any other ideas coming up? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Too excited. The one thing I would add, and sorry if you're going to ask this in a bit, Jaclyn, but is around situational leadership, which we've already done a podcast on. So it's the idea that you're going to adjust your actions as a manager or leader based on your setting. So that applies here as well. So the example I gave was a very directive example, right? I was telling the person the action, behavior, and result. Anna sharing from the party of the team member is great, because you could manage up as the team member, right? And either party can decide, should this be more directive? Should it be top down? Should I be telling you the action, behaviors, or result? Should this be something that we really sort of discuss and get buy-in around? And so it's more of a selling conversation. Should this be something that we participate in together? So maybe I'm trying to develop my team members, and so in terms of their expectations, I'm really going to work with them to set those. We see this really commonly when someone kind of goes into the unknown with a new role, perhaps, and the manager and the team member may work together to build the job description, right? Which is something that can be frustrating, but can also be really beneficial. So it's something we do together, especially in project work. I think there are opportunities for the manager to collaborate with the team members on what expectations are for given projects. And then definitely with cultural norms, right? With cultural norms, you may see that in even more of a selling category. This is about getting buy-in. This is a really democratic scenario. What are the best cultural norms for our team to accomplish our goals? This is what we're setting out to do. What does that look like? What should our culture be? How should we be interacting with one another? Do we need to be collaborative? Do we need to be competitive? right? And neither of these things bad, just a consideration of the culture. And then lastly, you can have a very delegative approach to expectations. So you could say, hey, we need to increase customer retention by 10%. That's the results. I expect those results. I don't care what you do or how you do it. I trust you. Y'all are the experts. You know what you're doing, but you need to increase customer retention by 10%. Go forth and prosper, right? And so that's an expectation. Now, as a manager, I need to be honest about that and I can't change it, right? I don't care what they do or how they do it. I gave no boundaries as long as they increase customer retention, right? And that's a fine path as well. So if your expectations are vague, make sure they're intentionally vague. Make sure they're vague because you're truly giving open space for your team to be creative, to take risks, to make mistakes, right? And that's a wonderful, beautiful thing, as opposed to, hey, can you do X for me? Thanks. And the reality is I had 50 expectations around X that I just didn't disclose to you, right? And if you break any of those, suddenly you've broken an unspoken rule. And so, talked about a lot of things there, but initially my goal, just making sure we're approaching this situationally, we're remembering those verbs you can take in situational leadership, and you're picking the one you're taking very intentionally based on your situation.
I know what we're going to add there too.
I really like you saying that ambiguity should be intentional. That's really good. Yeah. Because it does allow for the opportunity for the team member to do things on their own. So when it's intentional that there is ambiguity about what the actual expectation is, whether it's around the result or the behavior that's going to get you to the result, then if it's intentional, great. But if you have a specific vision, then communicate that.
Mm-hmm.
How can, as we kind of look forward here, how can a manager be ensuring they are doing this successfully, especially if this is something new? I mean, I think we've mentioned a few guidelines. There's the diagnostic. There is thinking about it from situational leadership as well. Chelsea, would you add any other kind of comments around how a manager can ensure they are successfully setting expectations and be able to gut check that, I guess?
Yeah. Like anything in regards to these sort of people-to-people skills, start with your goals or desires as a manager. So just have some intentionality around, what am I trying to do here? And not just the results of the expectation, right? But in general, what am I looking for? I need an engaged team. I need a team that's highly emotionally connected and participating with the work. And any goal that you have as a manager, I need to delegate more. I need to free up my time. We have really ambitious goals this quarter and we need to hit them. I've been getting a lot of pressure from leadership. We need to hit them. And I know these are hard. Whatever it is that's on your mind, maybe you're going after a promotion, right? You're looking for a promotion. Whatever those goals are, you can use expectations in support of those goals, but at first start with that measure of success. And so then I say, okay, knowing that, what are the expectations I have around my team members' roles, given this is my current focus? What are the expectations I have around the projects that they're working on? What are the expectations around how they're working together, how they're interacting with one another? So that's one way to think about it, right? Set your focus first. Why do expectations even matter? Another way, in sort of the most simplistic fashion, is just, am I getting what I want? So, when I'm communicating with my team members, I have expectations. Are those expectations occurring? If yes, don't break something that isn't broken, right? We've talked a lot about these. I'm not saying everyone should change everything they're doing to mirror what we're discussing today. If everything's working the way you want it to work, you're doing something correctly. I would imagine you are already communicating expectations like this. There's not a lot of ways to flip this coin. If it's not working the way you want, make small little tests. What if I add a little more detail in the action? What if I add a little bit more detail in the behavior? What if I collaborate on the behavior? What if I am more specific on the desired results? Does that adjust my team members' behavior? Not, does that get exactly what I'm looking for? Just, is their behavior slightly adjusted? Am I able to get different results? Okay, yes, let me push it further. Let me push it further. So these small iterative tests. So kind of two ways you can use expectations towards your broader goals. And also just say, like, this isn't what I want. What do I want? What small adjustment can I make to see if I get closer?
Yeah, and I think that you can also gut check it quite easily by just thinking on a scale of 1 to 10 within these different like buckets of expectations, like around how team members are performing their responsibilities and the things within their role, on projects that we've had, on assignments that we've had, that I've assigned to people, with our culture in general, with our collective behaviors in general. How often am I feeling like my expectations aren't being met? And really start there with where are there areas where you often feel like your expectations just aren't being met, and there might be misalignment, and start there and start using that formula and thinking through where you could, like Chelsea said, add a little bit more detail and just be a little bit more specific, and see how that goes.
I know we're talking a lot about managers there. Anna, would you add anything specifically for project teams or team members where they can also apply this and truly know if they're being successful? I mean, work the skill. Maybe they become managers one day too. It's probably applicable, but what would you say to them specifically for how to be successful at this?
I think anytime you are being given an assignment or you're working on a project, really question whether you know exactly what it is that is being expected of you in terms of the results you're supposed to deliver. What is the actual outcome, when, and what are you expected to do to make that outcome occur? And do you actually feel like you have 100% clarity on how you think that is? And if you do, great. Then you can also assess, once that deliverable actually happens, how successful was it? What was the reaction of your manager? What was the reaction of the other team members if you're working on something together? And see if that aligned with their expectations in reality. And then ask a lot of questions. It's better to, again, over communicate, ask too many questions, say things out loud, like stating the obvious. It's better to do that than sit and wonder on your own and think that you're supposed to hand in the perfect version when actually you're expected to give in version 1. You are causing unnecessary stress for yourself, unnecessary pressure, and sometimes you might be reducing opportunities for collaboration and taking away opportunities for others to give their input and use their knowledge to make that thing better. So really ask a lot of questions, question the assumptions you have around your expectations and thoughts on what it is you're supposed to deliver and how you're supposed to deliver it.
That's great. As we start to wrap up here, I'd love for each of you to just share maybe one key takeaway, one thing that really people can just start to apply right now. We've shared a lot of tips already, but if there's just one thing that they could do today, what would that be? So Chelsea, let's have your tip first.
Yeah. So if you've not drawn a lot of mindfulness to expectations in the past, my tip would be just to start with, how did I communicate expectations around this? So if a few times a week you can identify something you're talking about with your team members, how did I communicate expectations? How well did I tell them action, behavior, result? On the other side of the coin, if you've already drawn a lot of mindfulness to how you're communicating expectations, you spend a lot of time on it. You maybe even are using the categories we're giving you. Apply situational leadership. What action am I taking as a manager within these? How am I directing, selling, participating, delegating the action, the behavior, the result?
Anna, how about you?
I would probably start with whether you are a team member or a manager by gut checking, doing that on a scale of 1 to 10, thinking, if I'm a team member looking at my to-do list on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident am I about my knowledge regarding the expectations on the things on my to-do list? Do I really understand my priorities? What's supposed to be delivered when? What degree of perfection? And then as a manager, thinking about expectations in those buckets of categories and really doing that 1 to 10 assessment of, do I feel like on the assignments that are out right now with my team members, or that they've handed in recently, were my expectations met? With regard to thinking about how their actually performing their roles and doing with their job descriptions, how often are my expectations being met? And with the cultural norms and the behaviors on the team, the general culture of your team, is the general culture of your team what you expect, on a scale of 1 to 10, and start there, and then consider whatever your number is, what would make it go one number higher. So if you say 7, then what would make it go to an 8, and start there and start small, and then you start building up from there.
Well, in both cases, I really heard that mindfulness, right? Bringing some consciousness to what we do every day. And it can be really powerful. And you can probably catch on here too, as we set these clear expectations, then it helps us deliver feedback a lot easier. So really this is, I think Chelsea said at the beginning, this is a powerful tool to use and refine so that those difficult conversations become just that much less difficult in the future as well, when you do have to realign or have these conversations too. So thank you both for sharing your expertise and wisdom. And I hope this was valuable for you all as well. You can join us next time on Coaches Take on Work. And we hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care.
Thanks, Will. We expect to see you next time.
Yes, we do.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to Coaches Take on Work through your favorite streaming service so you don't miss a future episode. We are Coaches Take on Work, and for this episode's hot take. And so when we're talking about expectation, it's really the game of aligning your beliefs with others.